Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Natasha Kircha. Coming up in today's newscast, President Trump begins deliberating on the release date for his peace deal of the century.
Incredible new evidence in the case of one of the world's most infamous Nazis comes to light, giving closure to survivors of the Sobibor concentration camp.
And Israel has something that the whole world needs, but it costs $16.5 million, and it's made from pineapple. Stay tuned to find out what it is. Well, the world is waiting on the White House's Middle East peace plan. In fact, we've been waiting through multiple delays and 2 Israeli elections. But now, according to new reports, the wait may soon be over.
Will he? Won't he? Is it a good time or even a good idea? Well, the minds are racing with anticipation again as U.S. President Trump is expected to decide whether to publish his deal of the century before Israeli elections or not. And the decision is expected within the coming days following his week full of meetings with his peace team in Washington and with regional Arab leaders at the Davos World Economic Forum. Now, this plan includes a second half of the U.S.'s Middle East Peace Initiative detailing proposed political dimensions and solutions for the conflict. The first half, which deals exclusively with financial incentives for the Palestinians to negotiate with Israel, was presented in Bahrain last summer at the Peace to Prosperity Summit. In any case, what is holding Trump's decision back now? Well, according to senior officials speaking to Israel's Channel 13 News, there are several factors, including the effect it may have on Israeli elections on March 2nd, as well as the upcoming impeachment proceedings against him. Meanwhile, in Israel, the decision is also split as Prime Minister Netanyahu wants the deal published as soon as possible, while Blue and White chairman and rival Benny Gantz wants it delayed. Still, White House advisor Jared Kushner will be arriving in Jerusalem for meetings with both Netanyahu and Gantz later this week, after which he'll discuss the details with President Trump, who will take them into his considerations.
Now, speaking of the coming March elections, we hope you're paying close attention because the details around the Knesset are changing daily, and now so are the campaigns.
Israelis are sick of the ongoing political stalemate. They're sick of the crippled government, the frozen initiatives, and the billions of shekels being lost to an endless election cycle with no end in sight. But in an attempt at turning lemons into lemonade, the Blue and White Party is now using citizens' unrest in its campaign strategy. The party's new slogan reads, "We have to move forward," and it's meant to capitalize on the feelings that people don't want a revolution, but they do want change and they want the country to work with stability. As for the Likud, Prime Minister Netanyahu's party is expected to unveil its own new slogan in the coming days. But meanwhile, the question remains, will Netanyahu be included in the vote at all? The Prime Minister and his aides are now angry at Likud MK and Knesset Speaker Yuli Edelstein for allowing a Knesset panel on immunity to form. And the committee will now decide whether to grant Netanyahu immunity from criminal prosecution while in office or not. But it's highly expected to refuse the Prime Minister's request.
75 years ago, no one believed that Jews would have their very own state, and certainly no one would have predicted that Israel would host all of the world's most important leaders for a week of conferences and events.
Yeah, and we're talking about all the big guns here, by the way. Prince Charles, United States Vice President Mike Pence, Presidents Vladimir Putin and Emmanuel Macron. These are just some of the names that Israel is hosting this week. And here to explain the events and how the country is dealing with the logistics is ILTV's Shanna Fold. Shanna, tell us what's going on here.
Okay, now Israel's foreign minister is calling this the biggest event that Israel has seen since 1948 when the country was birthed. Now, let me explain what those are. First, we have a couple of things going on. The 75th year liberation, we're commemorating that, the liberation of Auschwitz in Poland, a concentration camp. We're marking 75 years since that camp was liberated. Now, we're also hosting the fifth World Holocaust Forum, which is in tandem with that, and the International Leaders Forum, which is actually bringing 45 world leaders, and we're talking about all the presidents from European countries and all around the world. They're coming to Jerusalem. They're going to be posted up in fancy hotels, and of course...
And there was a little bit of scandal, right?
Well, every event has to have some scandal. So, and this is a big one. It's actually also considered the biggest event traffic-wise to the country since 2016 when Shimon Peres died. But let me tell you about the scandal. The Polish president withdrew from this event. He was feeling slighted and insulted that he wasn't going to get an opportunity on stage to speak, and that Russia's President Putin has been given the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they have a disagreement on events surrounding the Holocaust, and the president of
Poland.
of Poland, yeah, thank you, felt slighted that he wasn't given the chance to defend his ideas. But okay, so how are the Israelis taking this? Will it impact everyone?
Well, first of all, let's just kind of talk about what's going to be happening during this event.
So we're kicking off the event with a 250-person dinner, very exclusive. There's going to be a lot of top singers and musicians from Israel there. A huge dinner with all Israeli typical foods, and they're telling us that it's foods that are locally sourced produce. I made a joke that I could have made it because I live right next to Shuk HaCarmel, and I could have put those things together myself. And also, one thing that really touched me was that the music is going to be played one song with a violin that was recovered from the Holocaust.
Amazing. All right, well, Shanna, thank you for joining us with this information. This event is taking place on Thursday, so we'll be covering it more.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right.
All right, now get ready for this next story because it's really an emotional roller coaster. But the decades-long mystery is solved, and the John Demjanjuk saga is over.
He went from retired auto worker and American immigrant and family man to Ivan the Terrible. Then he was found innocent in Israel of Ivan's crimes against humanity, but only to be accused of Nazi war crimes committed just a few kilometers away. So who was John Demjanjuk? Well, in spite of his claims to innocence, newly discovered images appear to prove that the Ukrainian-born Demjanjuk was in fact a Nazi guard at the Sobibor death camp. And the photos taken from the estate of Johann Niemann, a deputy commandant at Sobibor, are reportedly the first to positively show Demjanjuk at Sobibor, where at least 167,000 Jews had been gassed to death. Now, in addition to wrapping up an open case, this conviction also brings much-needed emotional closure to many. Demjanjuk died while awaiting the German court's decision on his appeal, meaning that, according to German law, he technically died an innocent man. But with these new findings, which will be made public January 28th, perhaps this terrible story might finally be put to rest.
All right, speaking of the Holocaust, anti-Semitism in Europe has been exploding over the last few years, and Belgium in particular has made headlines several times. And joining us now to discuss this issue during her very special visit to Israel is the governor of Antwerp province in Belgium, Professor Kathy Burke. So, first of all, thank you for joining us, and let's talk a little bit about the rise in anti-Semitic incidents that we've seen in Belgium particularly. Why do you think this is the case? Why is this happening?
Well, it's hard to say why it is, but of course it's staying in our history. We have it already in 1980, 1982. I still remember as a kid that there was a bombing in the middle of the diamond sector. It was against a synagogue and some people died. But probably it goes back to the war. So in 1942, there were razzias also in the neighborhood where I live, and almost 24,000 Jews were deported via Mechelen to Auschwitz and lost their life. So 60%, especially in Antwerp, 60% of the Jews lost their life. Of course, there were also lots of people in Antwerp that helped the Jews to really hide themselves and to survive the war. But it is said that during that war there was also a collaboration by the government and by the city council and by some officials, by the police. So indeed, it is still the case that we have to live and we are confronted with anti-Semitism, but we try to react as firm as possible. We have a very good relation with the Jewish community. Every year again we commemorate the liberation of Auschwitz, we commemorate the Shoah, we remember all the victims of the 6 million Jews that lost their lives during the Second World War. So it hits us, but we have to be very aware and alert on it.
So I just want to press a little bit more in terms of the origin. Are you saying that it's more, it just never left, it was maybe buried, or it kind of is making a resurgence?
Well, it probably has to do, but it's quite complicated in the sense that we are a federal state, but we are a very complex state with a lot of nationalism in the north, Flemish-speaking people, and Germany and German is a language which is quite related to Dutch. So very often they say, well, there were many people in the northern part of Belgium collaborating with the Germans in the belief that maybe one day there will be a bigger, I don't know. So that's what makes it very sensitive and very vulnerable for Flanders. But also in the south of the country there were some issues. But in Brussels particularly, there was less collaboration than in the north. But it goes about now. First of all, we have to remember so that we will never repeat or that nobody ever repeats what happened, the atrocities. It is a big stain on the history and we have to be very alert. And now you see that government and the governments and main people in government, they are very alert and they do not accept any issue at all on anti-Semitism. But we have to be very alert. That's
you know, and I just can't help but think about the view among Belgian people regarding Israel. I mean, this is your first time here in Israel?
This is my first visit to Israel.
Okay, so it will be interesting to hear just kind of what your take is on coming here, because I do think that there could perhaps be a connection between anti-Semitism and the view towards the state of Israel and its right to exist. Is that a fair statement to make?
No, I don't think that anybody doubts about the right to exist of Israel. But very often they give critique also on the policy in Israel, and maybe underneath there might be some issues about what is the relationship between Israel and the Palestinians and so on. But still, I think there's nobody, you can hardly find anybody in Belgium that does not respect, of course, and that does not accept the right of existence of Israel. But they do not have to be naive, because they have to be very well aware of all the threats, of all the issues also, and they have to understand what's at stake, I think. But just coming back on the anti-Semitism, just one thing, because that was very sensitive. Last year, we had a carnival, and carnival is like Purim.
Parade,
yes, the
That's
Oost.
what
Yes, so there you see that they don't even realize how it hurts people. So there's a lack of empathy. And you do not portray Jew people in the way they did. We also had some columns in the newspapers. But the good thing is that there was a good reaction. So people say, we do not accept it. Okay, this column,
is it
seems
malicious
innocent.
at all, or is it just ignorant?
Oh, is it just ignorance? Well, it's hard to believe that somebody can be ignorant. I think they just wanted to laugh, and they laugh with everything.
Sure.
And of course, they are looking for some provocation. And the provocation comes an aim in itself, not realizing, because Aalst is not Antwerp, and in Antwerp, of course, we know we have a large Jewish community, we cherish the Jewish community. So for us, it was as shocking as it is for you.
Well, I guess if you could just give us a quick one-liner on what your experience has been like here in Israel, that would be great, because unfortunately we do have to wrap up, but we would like to hear your...
Well, what amazes me the most is that there are the threats, but you are so resilient as a state, so innovative, so the dream big. You go out from necessities and you keep on being and believing in the future, not being naive. You are very alert and at your qui-vive, but it is amazing to see how innovative, how strong you are, and also you're willing to sharing everything, sharing the good things, being very open. So I hope you will cherish that and have all the communities living good and well together. And for me personally, it's amazing to be here at the cradle of our civilization. And it's a beautiful country.
Governor, thank you so much for being with
Thank
us.
you
It's
for
a pleasure to
joining us.
have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on. It turns out that not all of Israel's natural energy partners are happy with the new deal, as Jordanian lawmakers are now working to ban Amman's natural gas agreement with Israel. ILTV's Nittany Manson reports.
Israel and her neighbors are off to a very strong start in 2020, with the beginning of gas exports to Jordan and Egypt from Israel's offshore Leviathan field. And the $10 billion agreement, which lasts 15 years, has already become essential to energy stability for tens of millions of Egyptians and especially Jordanians. Jordan imports nearly 98% of its energy needs, but in spite of this fact and a long-standing peace agreement, the announcement of the deal has sparked massive civilian protests in Amman. Many Jordanians still consider Israel an enemy state. And so in light of the people's unrests, the Jordanian parliament has now voted unanimously in favor of a law that would ban gas imports from the Jewish state. Still, the draft faces several obstacles ahead of passing into force, among them Jordan's new energy saving and security. Also, the government has acknowledged that the deal is technically between companies and not a political matter in the first place.
Having a child with a disability can place unique demands on a family, and some studies conducted on this topic have even suggested that children with disabilities are a risk to their siblings' development. Well, a new Israeli study is saying just the opposite. Check this out.
Getting along with your brother and sister can already be difficult to begin with. But what if your sibling is dealing with a disability? Well, Israeli researchers have just revealed that children who grow up with intellectually disabled siblings have higher levels of empathy and even experience less conflict and rivalry within their families. So, how did they come to this conclusion? Art therapists evaluated the artwork of dozens of children between the ages of 8 and 13, asking them to draw themselves with their siblings using colored pencils. Then they scored the illustrations depending on features like the distance between the figures on the page or the absence of a parent, to determine the kinds of relationships in the family. The analysts made sure to review the pictures without knowing the familial backgrounds of the illustrators themselves to minimize bias. And as for why the researchers chose drawings, well, they say pictures are more effective than questionnaires because kids often alter their responses according to what they believe is more socially acceptable. Well, overall, the findings suggest that having a disabled child is beneficial to sibling relationships, even revealing that siblings feel a higher level of dedication and obligation to their disabled brothers or sisters.
And now for more on a recent Israeli study involving the siblings of children with intellectual disabilities, we have Israeli psychologist Dr. Camila Folkash-Lavan. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so some research has been done to deal with the challenges of growing up with a sibling with intellectual disabilities, but not a lot of studies have been really done about the siblings.
Yes.
So, what's new here? What's different?
So the difference is, as you've mentioned already before, that it takes a very positive spin and a positive outlook, because before we know the challenges where it might be very, very difficult for the family to cope with different things. Also, sometimes typically developing children might get kind of lost in the mix because more attention is given to the child with a disability. But here, what the research shows is that actually the child that's typically developing might have a lot of benefits from being next to a child with special needs. And some of them, of course, are being more mature, having better empathy, knowing how to take care of somebody else, listening, which is very, very important.
Is there maybe, to oversimplify, a risk of growing up too fast?
You can say that on one hand, okay, of course, but on the other hand, you see that there's better social skills for the child. The child is more motivated, knows how to problem solve, knows how to be sensitive and help someone else, which isn't a bad thing, it's a good thing.
No, yeah.
Well, what I think is so groundbreaking about this study is that it kind of goes against the grain. Don't judge a book by its cover, right? Because most people think it's just this enormous struggle to have a person in your family who is not developing typically, but here we're seeing something completely different, right?
Well, it doesn't negate the struggles. I want to be clear on that. The struggles are still there, but this research specifically also shows the benefits that it might have on the child's development, that's typically developing, on the development of value of how to communicate with somebody else and how to be more sensitive to the needs of somebody else. The challenges also still do exist, and they're very real, and it's very important to also highlight that, because a lot of times, like, all families might need help sometimes, and children that are with special needs take a lot of effort, a lot of attention, and it would be nice if maybe your friends, family, sometimes it's very isolating to be in a situation like that, so it would be nice if you reach out to them, help them, I don't know, let them sleep, take them for a cup of coffee. So the challenges are also still there, but we now also know that there are also benefits, which is very important.
Well, yeah, it's also, I think, extremely important for families like this who kind of want to remove a taboo around that as well. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Fire hydrant, Johnny pump, fire plug, however you call this thing, it stores water in case of emergency. And you probably don't think much about hydrants unless you're trying to park your car in a crowded block. But some Israeli techies have been looking into this safety mechanism for years, and now they're making it that much safer.
Fire hydrants are supposed to protect us in case of emergency, but surprisingly, they can also be a hazard. Several years ago in northern Israel, for example, a thief stole gasoline, and then to avoid getting caught in a police chase, he ended up dumping it in a nearby hydrant. While locals couldn't drink the water for an entire 3 months afterwards. And that's where the Israeli company Hydrant comes into the picture. They've developed an electronic bracelet that fits around the nozzle of a fire hydrant to monitor what leaves and enters its mouth. And if water is coming out, then it's likely theft, while if something's going in, it can be dangerous. Well, with the Hydrant bracelet, sensors trigger an alarm on fire hydrants that alert security companies to check out potentially fishy situations. Right now, though, the bracelet is going through a pilot round in major Israeli cities like Haifa and Tel Aviv. And best of all, it only costs $3. But finally, this simple bracelet could make a major impact in cities like Chicago, which loses $9 million worth of stolen water every year.
Healthy snacks on the go are one of the biggest food trends in the market, and Israel has a lot to offer in this space. In fact, ILTV's Nittany Manson has the breakdown on some must-try Israeli snacks that are just going global.
Yeah, you guys, I love to snack, but it can be hard to keep that habit healthy. But don't worry, because I've got 5 Israeli-flavored snacks to fill your belly. All right, let's start with chocolate. Let's face it, not all chocoholics like that so-called healthier dark chocolate, which is why you should try Sure Choc. It's a milk chocolate bar that's high in fiber, low in sugar, and it has the same texture as a normal chocolate bar. The Israeli food tech company Duo Matok has teamed up to make this milk chocolate bar that has 44% less sugar than your standard fix. So it should hit shelves in Israel first, and then the UK and beyond. Chocolate has never tasted better.
That's fair.
Up next are Hunch wafers. They're gluten-free, non-GMO cookies that are made in Nazareth and developed by the Israeli Strauss Group. They aren't on store shelves yet, but they're going to hit the stores soon in the international market. Israelis consume about 20,000 tons of wafers per year, second only to Austrians. So let's just say Israelis know their wafers. And who wouldn't want to chow down on organic dark chocolate wafers with almond cream? Healthy and delicious.
That sounds amazing, actually. I want some of that.
Yeah. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I love me some freeze-dried food, which brings us to Astro. Israeli freeze-dried nutritional cubes made of fruit, vegetables, and grains. They're basically meals in a cube, and the Israeli food manufacturer Strauss says they're made using the same technology that food scientists from NASA use to make chow for astronauts. Imagine that, a healthy snack that makes you feel over the moon.
Very corny.
It sounds like space food.
And bamba, that's all I have to say for our next snack. Bamba is basically Israel's national treasure. It's a peanut butter flavored maize snack that has made it so that Israeli kids have extremely low levels of peanut allergies because they're basically raised on this stuff. They melt in your mouth. It's a snack that is even recommended by the official guidelines for the prevention of peanut allergies in the United States. Bamba is so delicious that in 2019, the Israeli Osem company pumped out 1 million bags of the treat daily to meet this ridiculous demand. And last but not least, Dream Pretzels. These vegan, non-GMO thin pretzels are manufactured by Meir Bagel in Israel. They contain 75% less fat and 35% less sodium than other pretzels. And let me tell you, they taste just as good. The Meir Bagel company was founded in 1949, and today they hold more than 60% of the Israeli pretzel and cracker market. Chef Rachel Ray even featured them on her show.
All right, well, that's the kind of crunch I like.
We know.
Super informative, Nittany. Thank you so much for joining us with this.
My pleasure.
I love Bamba. That's all I'm going to say.
It's the best.
All
With
right.
that, though, let's now take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be cloudy with scattered showers and a chilly minimum temperature of about 47 or 8 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow will be rainy again with highs of just 53 or 12 degrees Celsius.
All right, now before we go, let's take a look at what is going viral in Israel on tubing.
Wow, that does not look like his wife, I think, from the way
The
he
second he saw
reacted
the
there.
camera was on him, he just slyly moved his arm away from her. I feel very bad for both women involved in that story. We're not sure they're Israelis, but it has been going viral in Israel.
But anyway, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.46 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube. I'm Aaron Porras.
And I'm Natasha Kirchuk. Thanks so much for watching.